Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? Driving high will get you a DUI. And if you're wondering if law enforcement can tell you're driving high, well, everyone else can. Friends?
I can tell you drove high.
Parents?
I can tell when you drive high.
Relatives?
I can tell. You drove here high, didn't you?
So what makes you think law enforcement can't?
I can tell.
If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
You've never been one to settle. Stand down or stand still. You're a lifelong learner, energized by excellence. There's a fire inside you can't ignore. You've got competition to outrun, momentum to build on, and your own high standards to meet. Stop now? Not a chance. At Capella University, we help you catch what you're chasing because you've always had the drive. Now, go earn the degree. Capella University. What can't you do? Visit capella.edu to learn more.
I'm pretty confident talking into a mic. Hey, I'm doing it right now. But home projects? I second guess everything. Is that noise normal? Is that water damage? Who do I even call? That's where Thumbtack comes in. Just upload a photo or voice note, and it uses AI-powered search to match you with the right top-rated local pro. So instead of guessing, you get clarity and can hire with confidence. For your next home project, try Thumbtack. Hire the right pro today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. And today we are going to cover the much, much more part of this podcast. I had the opportunity this morning, August 26th, to sit down with Seth Cutler, who is the CEO of charging company IONNA. If you're not familiar, IONNA was formed in 2023. It is a joint venture between 8 automotive manufacturers. So we have BMW, GM, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes-Benz, and Stellantis. Well, I guess, and Toyota. Initially, it was 7, and then Toyota came in 2024. In that relatively short amount of time, their network has grown to be more than 100 locations. It's actually quite impressive how quickly IONNA has grown. The main thing, and you'll get this in the interview as well, but it's the customer experience. You're not just driving into a location, getting out of your car and plugging in. Like the IONNA Rechargeries have things for you to do. They have bathrooms, they have garbage cans. Some of them have little retail spaces, and Seth is going to talk about that. I do want to let you know, Seth uses an acronym he uses QSR. And that is quick service restaurant. So basically we're talking like a Starbucks or, just a place you could grab a quick coffee and a drink. So when you hear QSR, that's what that is. And then more about Seth. Seth is a veteran in the EV charging space. So, and that's saying something because the EV charging space hasn't been around for all that long. But Seth worked for GE, Electrify America, and EV Connect. And, like I said, now he is the CEO of IONNA. And in the interview, we're going to, and I don't want to spoil too much, but we're going to talk about some of the lessons that he learned along the way and what IONNA is fixing and, trying to make a good customer experience for everybody out there who owns an EV. So before I spoil the entire interview, let's go ahead and welcome Seth to the show.
Thanks, Bodie. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man. This is kind of fun and exciting. First, I have to say, after doing some research, you are very accessible. You're an easy CEO to talk to, it seems like. So that kind of says a lot to what you're doing with IONNA. When you look at your career, you started with, I believe, GE, then you went to Electrify America and EV Connect. Um, when you look at, charging stations today, what do you see differently because of all the experience that you've had to this point?
Yeah, I think I tell people this all the time, right? The market has gone through these kind of waves or phases, and I think that's very natural, especially in a nascent market or nascent industry. And so, where we are now in terms of that trajectory is a place where, reliability is getting better, density of charges are getting better, customers have more choice. And so where customers now are looking for is, say, how do I get the best experience at the most affordable price? And that's really where IONNA's focus is, making sure that we're not just putting in chargers in the ground, we're putting them where people want to go. We're providing amenities so that there's something to do while they're there. And we're finding ways to make sure that the pricing and is affordable to drivers as they look to go electric.
Yeah, and one of the things I mean, there's lots of stuff that we'll get into that I find interesting about what IONNA's doing, and I the only one in Arizona, the closest one to me is in Wilcox, so that's about
Mhm.
144 miles. I was gonna make a pilgrimage to the one in Scottsdale, but it's not open yet as far as your website goes, but, um, when you look at an IONNA station, is there something you can point to and say, "That's there because I learned this lesson the hard way 10 years ago?"
For sure, right? I mean, I think if you look at, and Arizona is a great story, right? Like we have a site opening next month in Tempe where we bought or we're leasing a old car dealership that we're converting to a full scale rechargery with a driver lounge and bathrooms and vending machines and canopies. And to me, when we started the company and really start to build the operations from early on, we said, look, the world has changed in charging. And so we wanted to make sure that the earliest sites we built were ones that had a very differentiated experience to really tell the story of what IONNA was trying to develop. Now we've filled in the gaps, so to speak, on the network side with sites that are partnered with key high quality retail partners. But if you look at the early sites we built out and you look at the sites we're going live with now, they're really differentiated, right? These are converted gas stations, they're converted QSRs, they're converted dealerships. Where we came in and said, hey, let's go build the amenity from the ground up that's purpose built for EV drivers. I think if I look at a lot of sites that have been put in the market, and I've got my fingerprints on a lot of that in the industry today, there was a lot that was done to get stuff in the ground fast, but maybe not with the best customer experience in mind. And I think that's a place that the team is hyper focused on, is not just get stuff in the ground, but make sure that it's really delivering for customers, bar none, from a great experience standpoint.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. The So I rented a Chevy. I had to go back to Alaska for a funeral. I went rented a Chevy Bolt, and Alaska, not known for its charging network, I'm gonna be honest, but I was like, "You know what? Let's do this." Um, I had one bad experience with charging networks after another, and I had to drive about 100 and I think it's about 180 miles, 200 miles from Anchorage to Soldotna, where they had a charging station, and it was just like failed charging experience, failed charging experience, failed charging experience. One, I could barely read the screen on when it actually did work, so I had no idea other than electricity was going into my car. That is something that really stressed me out, and I've been doing this since 2016. I've owned an EV for a while, so I'm not like a new EV owner, or even new to the world of EVs. In your perfect world, right? You've talked a little bit about the customer experience and things like that, but what do you see as the best interaction between the driver and the charger?
Yeah, so I think a couple ways to think about that. And I think the experience you just described is one that I think pains me and the rest of the organization here, because the folks that we've hired and the company we've built culturally is one where we really want to go fix charging in the United States and in North America as a whole. Because if we can do that, I think we can really unlock electrification more broadly in the market. Because today, charging anxiety, to your point, as you just told the story, is a real thing. It's still a thing. And so, we're hyper focused on that quality and making sure that when you come to a site, it works. You can get a charge. I think there are still people like you just said that go to a charging site and it's still a bit of a roll of the dice of, am I going to get charged here? That's just not acceptable for someone to say, hey, am I going to really make the investment into a 40 or 50 or $60,000 vehicle that I may not be able to fuel up? It doesn't work. And so then what that looks like is once you can kind of take off the table any misgivings about reliability. Then what you start looking at is how do you make the payment seamless, right? How do you get to a place where you give a variety of options, whether it's credit card or app, and really start to unlock plug and charge or auto charge for customers where they can plug their vehicle in and walk away. Because I think everything that we can do to reduce friction in that system or that machine for drivers, again, just creates a really great experience for them where charging is not a reason not to buy an EV. And honestly, if you look at EVs in general, those products today in the market are superior to even internal combustion in terms of speed and handling and acceleration and everything else goes alongside of that.
I do think it's funny that we're in a world where credit card processing has been going on for decades, and yet the fact that a credit card working at, and I know that IONNA has done a lot to make this work every time, not just sometimes, but for a payment system to stay up so that it's actually working, why is that so difficult for the EV charging industry? What magical thing do we have to overcome to make this work everywhere?
Look, I think EV charging. I think there's two big barriers to EV, or there's two big obstacles, I'll call it, for EV charging that exist in the market today. One is you got these essentially vending machines that are dispense electrons that are there's no humans there, they're unmanned, and so you've got disparate sites across the country, rural, densely populated locations that there typically are not people on site to service those stations, and so you're dealing with somebody who's trying to figure out what's wrong. They have to call a call center if there's an issue. There might be cellular connectivity problems driving some of the issues you're seeing, and so that's one facet of it. I think the second facet of it is that historically, this has been a nascent industry. So the people that have been designing charging stations, which has been heavily focused on, power conversion, power electronics, how do I take AC off the grid, convert to DC, high efficiency, put into a vehicle, may not have had experience in terms of the actual integration with credit card readers into the overall software solution. And so when you can start to say, hey, how do I make sure that I've got internet connectivity? How do I make sure that while I may not have people manning every one of these sites, I'm doing health checks on a regular basis to proactively check the locations? And then how do I make sure that we've got the right testing and integration with the credit card readers into the software? What that starts to do is remove the barriers and the obstacles that have existed to provide that level of ubiquity from a credit card terminal that, to your point, in the year 2026, you'd expect to see in the market that frankly just hasn't been there to date in the EV charging industry.
So that kind of leads us to what IONNA is doing differently, right? Um, when someone plugs their car into a charger and everything works, that's not interesting to anybody unless it doesn't work, right? That's the benefit. We don't want it to be interesting, but I kind of want to know what is happening behind the scenes, specifically for IONNA, in terms of. I know that that's a very difficult thing to make a boring experience possible. In terms of charging. I know you have all sorts of other cool things at your rechargeries, and we'll talk about those. But in terms of that, I can't imagine the undertaking. How much of the stack does IONNA own, or are we working with a lot of great third party partners on this? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think to your first part, which I think resonates really closely to me, is that to your point, talking about a good charging experience that it worked is not very exciting, honestly, right? But there's a lot that goes into making that work. And I always use the analogy of nobody goes to a restaurant and talks about the great meal they had, um, or right, or the fact that they get food poisoning. They'll talk about the fact that it was a great meal. And I think that's the difference here, or the analogy here is we need to make sure that charging becomes the equivalent of it works every time. Just like when I go to a restaurant, I'm not talking about how I didn't get sick. That's expected at the restaurant. And so to that point, though, there's a lot that goes in to make sure people don't get sick, so to speak, right? Or that they can charge their car. And so obviously, we're buying chargers from Alpatronic, which is I think a really great charger manufacturer, great partner in the space. There's a lot of stuff we're buying off the shelf, credit card readers and some software solutions, but we have developed our own software stack in house that goes across all the disparate systems from internet providers, credit card terminals, backend providers, integration into mobile apps that allows us to provide all types of alerting, diagnostics, monitoring, and we're now starting to work with AI solutions as well to be able to do predictive analytics to find out whether there's an issue before customers find out or may find there's an issue at the sites. That's been very helpful. When you couple all that from a tech stack standpoint into how we operationalize that from a service standpoint and labor standpoint, that's what I think has become a winning formula for the team that in 2.5 years has developed what it's developed, where we can roll trucks proactively. We're doing preventative maintenance more often than others, and we're biasing towards helping the customer. So if we get a report from a customer on from our call center or from a social media platform that says I had an issue, I think a lot of companies will spend hours, days, weeks determining if it really is a problem. What we do is we roll a truck with parts on hand immediately. And what we find is it may not have been a problem. Maybe there was a customer interaction issue. Maybe it required a reset of the software or the firmware. But either way, we're on site validating that immediately to make sure that that's not an actual problem. And then we use that data to train our AI model even further to help identify us in terms of, hey, was that a problem or not a problem, so we can inform ourselves better going forward.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, it can be quite expensive to just roll a truck to find out that everything's okay. Like, and that's probably a lot of the reason why those other charging companies aren't rolling trucks, just because doing
Yep.
that across a nationwide network can get quite expensive.
It can be very prohibitive on cost. So I think that's where we've done. I think we're really kind of in this new frontier now with AI models, where we can use that data now to really train our models in a different way by using the kind of, I'll call it human capital from a node sample or data node perspective to feed back into that model beyond what we're getting off of the telemetry of the chargers or the credit card readers. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that we're doing right now and really investing to really make sure that we can continue to deliver quality at scale as we build up the network.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll mention this in the intro, but IONNA has only been around since 2023, and your growth has been pretty significant, and your reputation remains very high in the EV community. Um, is I mean, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the business here in a minute, but is that something? I mean, obviously, that's something you got to be very proud of. Basically, that's not really a question. It's you should be proud of that.
Well, I'm proud of the team. I think it's not look. I think to your point, the OEMs announced the formation of the joint venture back in July of 23. We started operation in February of 24, launched our first site in December of 24, and here we are a year and a half later with I think impressive scale and really great quality. But the team has done an amazing job. I think we've hired the best of the best into the organization to do what we've done. And these are folks that are every day or run through brick walls, mission driven. Because I think a lot of the people that work here have come from the industry before, and they know the mistakes that have been made, the mistakes that we've made, I've made, and then we brought in other folks outside the industry that see the potential, and the opportunity, and I think it really resonates, with them of what we're building, right? I think we really are blazing a trail forward to really, reinvent electrification here.
When someone inside your organization has an idea, or and this is, I mean, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but how much how much ownership do they get if they're like, I think we can make this better? How much leeway do they get to run to make that better? Is that it? Kind of sounds like your company is pretty open to new ideas, being a fairly young startup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at, I'll pick on, so to speak, our software team. I mean, our software team has done amazing things on their own. A lot of times they're coming out saying, "Hey, we developed this thing. Look what we can do." And then they're sitting down with their operations team, and the operations team is saying, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't even know you guys were working on that." Now all of a sudden, it's something that we can go, productize internally. The AI model is an example of that, of what we're doing for service. So, we give everybody, each team gets their own mission in terms of, here's the mission you have to go accomplish. You guys come back and tell us how to make it possible, right? You got to get sites live. Tell me how we're going to get sites live, right? Does that mean that we do the construction for the utility? Does that mean that we do construction at risk? What are we going to do differently, right? Same thing with when we tell the team, hey, we have to go deliver reliability and quality. You guys come back and tell me what software tools you can develop and diagnostic systems you can put together. Because the truth is that we've hired some really talented, really smart people. We need them to help shape the organization and then the outcomes that will deliver real value to EV drivers.
Yeah, and if you want to keep those smart people, you got to give them room to run, right?
100%.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the charging sites themselves. Can you break down what a relay, what a rechargery is, and what a beacon is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, we've come up with a couple of these, what we call product classes, which I think is a huge differentiator for the business as a whole. And this was done, something we did very early on, to your point about, hey, what have we learned from the industry? This was one thing we learned, which is at the end of the day, we're operating retail environments. Some of them look different than each other, but at the end of the day, they're all retail. And so we have a classification of what we call Rechargery Relays, Rechargeries, and beacons. Rechargeries split into two places. They're full-scale rechargeries and they're rechargery ats. So I'll start with that product classification first. A rechargery is something where we've got a high-quality retail partnership, either something that we've done in-house by ourselves. So this is like we take over a gas station, we open a convenience store, we put in Amazon Just Walk Out technology, we put in a driver lounge. We've done that now probably half a dozen times, more in the pipeline. That's a rechargery. Where we can partner with a high quality retail partner, Wawa, Sheetz, Circle K, Casey's, Wally's, etc., they provide that experience for the drivers with bathrooms and a QSR and an experience for that driver to have directly inside of their location. So that's a rechargery. Then you have rechargery relays, which give us an opportunity to co-locate adjacent to a collection of QSRs or other amenities that are within walking distance, but may not be the same experience as you have at a Wawa or a Circle K. And those relays give us an opportunity to kind of fill in the network, so to speak, the skeletal structure as we build at scale, right? Because we're trying to hit across, dozens and dozens of states, and we're trying to go across, multiple different interstates as well. And we can't always build the amenity ourselves, and we can't always find a Wawa or a Sheetz or a Circle K in those locations. So they become your infill to the overall network. Those recharger relays are, though, no less an experience. Some of them have canopies still. They all have trash cans. They all have windshield wiper cleaners or squeegees. So even though they're not a rechargery, they still provide the same basic amenities and reliability. And then you have a beacon, which is really what I call a rechargery on relays. And this is a place where you've got a much larger footprint. You've got a much larger offering from a retail perspective. You have outdoor seating, et cetera. And so our first beacon right now is under construction. I was actually out there yesterday walking the site with our construction team. That site will be 22 high-powered charging bays. It's 1,000 square foot, essentially a convenience store with Amazon Just Walk Out. It's got an outdoor patio and games and outdoor seating that's covered. So this is a very large facility just off the 405 interstate in California. And it'll be our first one that we'll experiment with and then see how we scale it across the country from there.
One of the things that I do appreciate, and even though I haven't experienced it myself, but way back when I first covered that, 7 initially, but 8 automakers were going to, build a network. Sometimes there's like some skepticism there, but it really felt like there was like a customer forward type of location. Even like you said, trash cans. It doesn't seem like that's a big deal, but if you're on a long car trip and you have kids, trash cans are huge. But in my other job, I drive a fire truck, and every now and again I have to go down and get maintenance done at the truck center, right? And they have these driver lounges, which are very similar to what you're talking about. Like you can go to a vending machine, you can get a drink, there's coffee there, there's recliners and a TV, and for me, it's a very good experience because otherwise I'd just be sitting in the showroom waiting for my truck to get done, right? That would not be that's not a desired task for me to do in my day, but because of the way that they set these drivers lounges up, it is quite nice. And if I had to choose between two competing charging stations, the place that I could go and that I know that I could get a snack and use the bathroom, and some of these locations even have meeting rooms, I would 100% choose IONNA over the other places.
Well, it makes sense, right? I don't think anybody enjoys filling up their vehicle. Like no one enjoys going to the gas station, right? And I think similarly, we have to make sure that the charging is in the backdrop, right? I charge my car, but let me tell you about what I did while I was charging it, right? Charging needs to just occur in the background, which I think is something that can really differentiates electrification. In that one, look, 80% of charging happens at home, right? That's one of the beauties of electric cars is you can charge at home if you have availability to that. And if you have to charge in the public, which people still very much heavily rely on, you want it to be where they're talking about the experience and the destination and not about the act of charging.
Do you, I know that there have been some events at Rechargeries. Are you open to like Tesla clubs or Rivian groups or whatever, other EV associations having meetups at the Rechargeries?
Absolutely. I mean, we, even though we're a joint venture of 8 OEMs, we work very closely with the other OEMs out there. So, Lucid Motors has done ride and drive events at our Rechargery in Forest Park, Georgia, which has been great. We do work with Rivian. We do work with the F-150 Lightning Club all the time across the U.S. We're talking with Tesla clubs. So, really, I look at this as, at some point, I'll find something else to do. I'll retire. I want to look back and say, hey, listen, if IONNA didn't, if we don't see EV sales pick up, then IONNA failed. And I think I really mean that. And I think so does the organization. We have this driver first mentality of IONNA is meant to be a forcing function to help sell EVs in the US and to eliminate charging anxiety. And I think a huge barometer of success will be, do we see EV sales climb over the next, 2 to 3 years because of what we've built out across the US?
How do you, because I don't know that you advertise really, right? How do you let people know outside of just things like what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done a lot of grassroots efforts, a lot of community driven activities. So we've got a few different things we're doing. We have started doing some advertising, billboards as an example, very much on brand with us in terms of old meets new. I think there's still a lot of folks that rely on billboards, and when you're driving down the interstate, it plays really well. We are doing online advertising as well, but really where we've been focusing is on really engaging with the community. So, our comms team has developed a station hands program where they're partnering with, to your point, local car clubs, EV enthusiasts. We'll drop the price for the weekend to 20 cents a kilowatt hour, which is on par with almost home charging. We'll do a bunch of, giveaway merch and swag to drivers, and we'll do it in a way that we're partnering with the community. And then we work very closely with our investors, right? We're doing our Labor Day promotion, which we've done for the other big holidays. So it'll be 20 cents a kilowatt hour over that 4-day period starting next Friday. You'll see our OEM partners push out, in-app and email communications to their customers as well. So I think we've been very clever, I would say, or very intentional about how we try to get the word of mouth out to drivers. And then we've been very strategic in terms of how we work with our investors to be able to really get, kind of inform the community that we're here. I'll also recognize the fact that as a new company, I think we've got a lot of work in front of us to really build the awareness machine out to let drivers know that IONNA exists.
There's 8 major manufacturers behind IONNA. Uh, this gives you resources most startups aren't going to have, save like Electrify America or whatever, where they have VW Group. But for IONNA to have a healthy business, what does profitability look like? Because at some point in time, they're going to want this to stand on its own.
Yeah, so I think I get this question a lot, right? Like this is not a charity organization. This is a for profit for sure. And I think nothing changes going forward in terms of driving towards that mission about building a sustainable business, both sustainable for electrification, but sustainable in terms of something that will stand on its own. And I think very much in our ethos is we believe that if we can take care of the driver, everything else will work itself out. So we run the company very efficiently. It's why it's how we're able to scale the way we are. And so we're very much so trying to make sure that we are delivering a quality of scale product that people want to use. And if they want to use it, that'll continue to create, self-sufficiency into the future.
We know that it's, I mean, I've had so many people talking about, standing up, charging stations, and we know it's very expensive. What did you find was the biggest opportunity to reduce some of those costs to standing up the station?
It's a good question. Look, I think we've been very efficient in terms of how we design our sites and how we think about scale, and then where we spend money to accelerate and where we don't spend money because it doesn't make sense from a site build perspective. So, hyper focus on the customer experience and design. We'll invest there, but we won't in places that isn't going to help either the driver experience or get sites built faster. And so I think our scale definitely helps, right? When you're trying to build a scale, you can leverage that from a cost position standpoint, and then you can make certain decisions that help you get there as well.
And then when you look at, profit and the, with the money coming in versus the money going out, and you need to make cuts, where won't you make a cut? Like what area of the business where you're like, this is kind of, um, this is who we are. So we're not going to cut costs necessarily here. Maybe eventually you would have to, but initially what's protected?
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy, right? It's quality at scale. So we'll never compromise on the customer experience. If we have to roll a truck, we roll a truck. If it means that we're going to spend less money on advertisements, we'll spend less money on advertisements. If our software team says they need to develop new features to help reliability and quality, they get what they need, right? Got to protect the driver. So very much, we have these cultural tenets that we live by. The first one is safety. Everything has to be safe, right? We're dealing with, construction sites across hundreds of locations right now. We've got, families coming to charge our sites. We have to be safe. The second one we focus on is the driver first. Every decision we make, the driver's at the center of that decision. And then the last what we call cultural tenet is what we call IONNA Speed. And really what IONNA Speed is, it's really this bias towards action, make a decision, drive action forward, move the ball forward. I think a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, they can get stuck in the analysis paralysis and by committee and let's have another meeting and what should we do here? And what's allowed us to move fast and what's allowed us to maintain that quality is, we'll get in a room, what decision needs to be made? We're going to make the decision right now. We don't need to have 5 more conversations about how to make that decision. We know what matters, get the site live, deliver the right quality and the right customer experience to drivers.
Excellent. And I really only have one more question for you, which is when you you obviously do a lot of interviews. So what is one thing in terms of EV charging that you hope you never have to talk about again because it's been solved?
I mean, that's easy. I get that question a lot, right? And it's reliability. I think on all these podcasts, all these interviews, we get that question a lot still about reliability and quality. And I think until the industry, not just IONNA, but until the industry as a whole gets to that place where we don't talk about that anymore, I think charging is a problem in the US, right? It's a problem in North America. And so I think it behooves all of us, myself and everybody else in this industry, about really solving reliability once and for all. So people aren't, it's kind of like the old Verizon commercials where, the guy's walking around going, "Can you hear me now?" That's not advertised anymore, right? They don't talk about that because that is a thing of a nascent market that really has corrected. So I think that's where we have to get to on the charging side as a group.
Excellent. Well, Seth, thank you very much for coming on. How would people learn more about what IONNA is doing?
Yeah, check out our website, ionna.com. Follow us on social media. I know there's a lot of influencers that also follow us, so just look us up and on your next drive, give us a shot.
Excellent. All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Great to be here.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? Driving high will get you a DUI. And if you're wondering if law enforcement can tell you're driving high, well, everyone else can. Friends,
I can tell you drove high.
parents,
I can tell when you drive high.
relatives.
I can tell. You drove here high, didn't you?
So what makes you think law enforcement can't?
I can tell.
If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
I'm pretty confident talking into a mic. Hey, I'm doing it right now. But home projects? I second guess everything. Is that noise normal? Is that water damage? Who do I even call? That's where Thumbtack comes in. Just upload a photo or voice note, and it uses AI-powered search to match you with the right top-rated local pro. So instead of guessing, you get clarity and can hire with confidence. For your next home project, try Thumbtack. Hire the right pro today.
Parents, have you heard your kids say, "I'm not a math kid"? Well, with Mathnasium, every kid can be a math kid. They customize their math instructions so kids who are struggling are able to catch up and get ahead. And advanced kids are challenged to reach higher. Mathnasium makes math fun, so kids learn to love it. Parents say that Mathnasium has not only improved their kids' grades, it's given them a new level of confidence in math and in school overall. Visit mathnasium.com to find a location near you.
You ever heard the story of Harry? He was a legend around here. until one afternoon he left and never came back. Turns out, Harry went and made himself a website using Squarespace. Used Squarespace domains to buy artisanseatcushions.com. And he built a beautiful site with an online store to sell his artisan seat cushions. Now Harry's sitting on a fortune. And if our Harry can do it, anyone can. Build your business at squarespace.com. Use offer code EVERYTHING for 10% off your website or domain.
Okie doke. I want to thank Seth Cutler for coming on the show and being such a great guest. I would also like to thank Sarah for organizing this and putting this whole thing together. That was very helpful. I barely had to do anything, which is always appreciated. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Seth. If you want to learn more about IONNA, I'll put the link in the show notes as well. I should say that I mentioned that their new location is in Scottsdale, and Seth said it was in Tempe. He is obviously correct because he's the CEO of the company. It's on Scottsdale Road. It's actually on Scottsdale in the 202, which is right on the border between Scottsdale and Tempe. So when it opens next month, I'll definitely take a swing by and give their chargers a try, and I'll let you know my customer experience. Oh. I should also say, if you are somebody that drives a Tesla, or if you're somebody that's driving a car that uses a CCS plug, that's totally fine because they offer both. And I believe they offer both at every single location. But if you want to verify that, if you're out doing a road trip, you can go to their website and type in, click on Find a Charger and put in your location, and it will give you all that information in terms of how many of each connector they have. So anyway, big thanks to Seth, big thanks to Sarah. Really appreciate both of you. I'll put all the links in the show notes. If you have questions, you can send them to me. It's Bodie, Bodie at 918digital.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you just search my name, Bodie Grimm, BodieGrimm. And I hope y'all enjoyed this interview, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. All right, everybody, our next episode is going to be all news, and that will be Friday or Saturday, probably Friday. We'll see. Hope you all are having a great week, and I'll talk to you all soon.